Hello, I'm Peter Schaknat, Managing Director of Schaknat Electronic GmbH. We're optimizing a Scania R500. A quick word about the truck. This is the Scania R500 DC13-155 engine, 12.7 liters displacement. It's a Euro 6C engine with 2,500 Newton meters of original torque. This series is available with 410 horsepower, 450 horsepower, 500 and 540 horsepower. However, that's only with the Euro 6D engine, as the S540 or R45. It's just the way it is. These engines, this is actually one of my favorite engines. We've worked on a lot of these engines over the past few years. The engine is extremely robust. It has a fixed geometry turbocharger, no exhaust gas recirculation, a large SCR system, in other words, SCR only. As I said, the truck generally has very few problems. It's a very robust engine and drivetrain. I've even heard from customers who are concerned about fuel consumption that, in their experience, the old engines, if they are properly tuned, are actually the most economical, that they run the most reliably, and that they're also more responsive, because, to quote, the 6C engine generations just respond even better to the throttle. In terms of six-cylinder engines, this was actually the best series. The turbochargers always had a few issues from time to time. The shaft would break on the compressor side. Actually, they all had that problem. As I said, once they were converted to a fanny shaft or wooden bed, they didn't have any more problems. The new DC13 165 engines already have different turbochargers, ball-bearing turbochargers, so the system is completely different now. But as I said, this one was my favorite, and a lot of people really went for it. Just a quick note about today's process again. We'll be flashing again with the Schaknat App. We'll now go ahead and do the initial measurements again, then log all of the data, and then finally upload 2 data sets online, which will be the eco and the power optimization. Let's take another look at that. As I said, Huntelmann is a very good customer of ours. We've already worked on a lot of trucks for them. They have a huge fleet of 60 trucks. That's why, once again, we're driving both the walking floor and the refrigerated truck here. It's always important, first and foremost, to save fuel. And again, the transmission is set to comfort mode. Here again, it's clear that the main focus is on comfort and saving fuel. With the Scania trucks, the 500 series engines sometimes have their peak power a bit lower, depending on the software version. But that's not really relevant for us. But I would say, based on experience, the main torque, so the 2,500 Newton meters, they've always had that. The truck is now about 3 or 4 years old. So let's take a look at what kind of input power we have here. We've already got it set up. It is important to emphasize again, today we're measuring in four-wheel drive. And this is a really critical point. You have to measure in four-wheel drive, otherwise you will not obtain the correct power and torque readings. It is extremely important here that the alignment is perfectly correct, so that if the corner comes out to the left or right, we have secured it again at the front and also at the back, once more with the hydraulic cylinder. It's pulled down onto the drive roller with 4 to 5 tons of force. Another really important point, because we've done a lot of measurements over the last 2 to 3 months, is that we've often had cases where if the tires have a coarse tread pattern or a worn-out tread, we still experience slippage. So for some corners, I really had to measure 3, 4, even 5 times to get a proper initial reading. So you always have to pay very close attention, and that is precisely why it is so important that the tires are warm, but definitely not too warm. Sometimes what we have actually done is just leave the tires in the truck for another 10 minutes per hour, or we have even sprayed them with water to cool them down so that we can get more grip as they cool off. So I'd say now, as you can see back here, we've got everything strapped down. We're about to start with the initial measurement. Then we'll unlock the axle again, and it's also very important here that we raise the VMAX again. We'll measure again in gear, in direct gear. You saw it with the new TMS3 transmissions, the brand new ones that no one else has released yet. These are overdrive transmissions. With those, you can even measure in gear, but you actually have even higher power output in overdrive, meaning in the highest gear. Of course, we can't measure that far out, but still, there's even more power. But that's only the case with the TMS2 transmission. The synchronized transmission, the new transmissions don't have synchronization anymore. That's why it's important that we measure in 11th gear again, But with the VMAX unlocked, you shouldn't have any traction problems either. And as I said, let's take a look at the initial measurement. I'm going to accelerate it up again now in my desired gear. We'll do it here again. Let's measure in 10th gear and 11th gear, so you can see if there are torque deviations between the gears, because often these are also torque limiting transmissions. It's always important to turn off lane keeping, lane change assist, emergency brake assist. You don't want it to suddenly slam on the brakes at the wrong moment. That wouldn't be so good. That's why you use the SP position. Now we're accelerating up. We'll check everything again to make sure it's running smoothly. But again, it's amazing how smoothly it can run. So the next generation, you hardly feel any jolting in the seat. They really run quite straight in the lane. Then we'll turn on the fan. First, we'll measure the 10th gear. That means the axle is synchronized at 1000 revolutions. From 1000 on, the test bench gets the rear axle ratio. Alright, then we'll set up the measurement. Just like before, we need to take a measurement based on engine speed. Now we're braking down again to 800 revolutions. In this range, such a point is actually the starting point. Then we'll let the eddy current brake build up. Now we'll apply the torque so that it has a constant torque at the beginning. And then we start the measurement. We run it all the way through from the bottom to the top, up to 2200 revolutions. Then we disengage the clutch. During the acceleration process, we are able to measure the vehicle's torque, and then during the coasting phase, we measure the kilowatt power output. You see, the 10th gear is proving to be absolutely perfect. So what we have here is a standard output of 2500 Newton meters. However, this particular version actually has 2565 Newton meters. That's perfect if you know it like that. He said it's peak performance. Because of the Euro standard, manufacturers have to dial things back a bit at higher rev ranges, since it produces a very high soot output there. And because of the Euro standard, of course, over time you also have particulate filters, regeneration, exhaust back pressure, all that stuff, which also causes back pressure, so that the peak performance at the top isn't what it used to be. But as I said, we're talking about a difference of 22 horsepower until it reaches 500 horsepower. So that's definitely within the standard production tolerance. But here again, you can see the absolutely crucial thing, the base torque. But what you also see here again is that it really only has its maximum torque from 1000 to 1300 RPM. And then it already starts to drop off sharply again. We will now try to address that in the optimization process to balance it out so that we can simply maintain the torque for a longer period of time. So as I said, even when you're going uphill, even when you shift down a gear, that it drops off at 1500 to 1600 RPM and holds the gear. That way it's also elastic in terms of torque. That's good for fuel consumption. Having torque at low revs lets it hold gears longer, and even when you shift down, the torque is still available. Otherwise, this torque peak isn't good for the engine's elasticity. You can't really trust the transmissions with that either, because then the transmissions also have issues when shifting back and forth. That's how I would put it. Now we'll go ahead and optimize it with the app, read it out again, upload it back to the server. I've already prepared the data set for the car, and again, there will be eco and power optimization. But the customer wants the eco optimization together with the transmission optimization. We'll unlock it now, and then I'll show you on the app how we flash it. We're flashing the iCap again with our Schaknat app, just like before. We're connecting here to the OBD plug. Down here is the cap again. It already smells strongly of burnt rubber here. Let's go in here carefully. Let's wait until the blue light comes on down here. Then it will start searching as well. I've turned on the ignition over there. Then basically I go back to the Schaknat app. I select my scanner here. Then go to Bluetooth settings, get the adapter, the OBD link. You see it connected to it right away. Then go back again to the application. With the ignition now on, you will see that you are able to access the vehicle's control unit completely and automatically. Then I can proceed to enter the customer's license plate information here again. And that is another valuable function I can perform as well. 500 Rand. Now you can also see down here again, reading and clearing the error memory is already included. Again here, as you can see, these things are not yet stored. So you can see here all the P codes are stored. But in the future it will also come with labels and names. We can now simply clear all the errors in advance. You can see it goes super fast. This is actually a really nice solution with the app right now. Now we go back to the engine control unit here. So now we have the stock setting again, eco optimization and power optimization. And the customers have also said, if we have the eco optimization, we just flash to eco optimization. You see the truck's lights also turn on. The fuel pump also turns on. That's a flash mode. You see, I absolutely love it because it goes incredibly fast today. It really flashes through in a good minute. And that's also how it is when you really get an update status, that you're at the manufacturer, that you have your service done at the workshop, and you get an update. You can just flash it back in a few minutes, so that's really a super nice thing. With Mercedes, it takes a bit longer. For the other manufacturers, we're now gradually adding them as well, but we can't yet say how long the right processes will take there. The control unit was programmed correctly. We could turn it off now, turn off the ignition, but we don't have to. We can just go back, then go back again, and then here we go to the transmission control unit. So then you can still optimize the transmission. Here again, the parameters are stored for comfort, for engaging the starting gears, the pulsing, everything works here as well. These things are included in the coding. That also works when you drive it. As you can see, let's go here to optimize the transmission again. And then you can hear the transmission, it immediately starts controlling again. You hear it click, click, it goes pretty quickly. So then let's go back again. Now we can read the error memory again. So now you can see these CAN bus errors here again. In the transmission, in the TMS2, we have a CAN error. That's just due to the data transmission, but I can simply clear the errors now. So the error memory is clean. And that's how I leave the truck clean as well, and you can see it as well. The nice thing about the application is that all of the data sets that we develop on the test bench are automatically stored in the database. When we measure the performance correctly here, measure the torque correctly, and also get the consumption values right, and I have the software version out at the customer's site, it works 100%. If it behaves this way on the test bench, it will behave the same way in the field. Of course, it's always assumed that the battery must be technically sound. So as I said, if you decarbonize this turbo or particulate filter, if the exhaust back pressure from the particulate filters gets too high, it's clear that the engine loses power because it always has to work against the particulate filter. Then you can also see that the fuel consumption, power goes down and fuel consumption tends to go up. All right, as you saw, it's super easy and super quick. You can then disconnect the app again. And with that, we're basically done. So I'd say, let's go ahead and do the initial measurement. Let's take a look at the values to see what comes out of the eco optimization. On average, we have between 250 and 300 Newton meters depending on the engine output, rear axle ratio, and transmission gearing. We'll do the initial measurement and take a look at the result. We've now completed the initial measurement. This is Frank, the driver from the company, Huntelmann. He drives the truck. He's the regular driver of the Scania R500. The Van and Schuh Boden, I've already spoken with her, Frank. He has an average fuel consumption of 31 liters. So as I said, especially in this application, when we said we'd try to really get it down by 2.5 to 3 liters, Frank, here you can see the torque curve again. So you see the input power is perfect. So the input torque, we have 2,565 Newton meters as standard. It's specified at 2,500 from the factory. 478 horsepower, but as I said, up there at that peak power of 700 to 800 revolutions per minute. I do not usually operate there anyway, so as I said, you can pretty much ignore that. You can see now with the optimization, it has 2,850 Newton meters of torque, so 300 Newton meters more. The lower curve is the torque curve. You can see down there, it now reaches its maximum torque almost 200 revolutions per minute earlier. So you will notice now, for example, when you drive out of the yard here, it shifts gears much earlier. We have now also programmed the transmission for comfort so that it shifts smoothly. Even when you're maneuvering, going forward or backward, it doesn't force the gears in, but really synchronizes them so that everything runs smoothly. As I said, the main focus is always on fuel savings. Also, to practice a bit, what can the truck actually do? You can control that very well with the accelerator pedal. Here's how it should shift up when you have the right amount of torque available. So you can try it out at around 11 or 1200 and gently ease off the gas, and then it shifts up. This process is simply designed to keep fuel consumption as low as possible. But I would say, in practice, we have already optimized this in other areas as well. The resulting difference was really about 3 liters in total. As I said, you can see the peak performance at the top end, and as was already mentioned, we can maintain the maximum torque for a longer period of time. If you don't downshift when going downhill, it doesn't stall, but instead it continues running quite strong. It really holds on to the torque. If you, for example, take the route through the Castle Mountains, you will save approximately 5 minutes of your total travel time. Then you have fewer revolutions and save indirect agitation fuel. I am very satisfied with the result. I think you do too. The boss got the app from us. He can flash the trucks himself. He can flash it with the updates. So, as I said, if you ever need to get updates at the workshop, the fleet manager or the boss can reprogram it themselves. We always have a little gift for our drivers. You know yourself here with Hugo Boss added on. The UCO board stack, great. As I said, thank you very much for stopping by. If anything comes up, we'll just talk. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you. We're now at the end of our video, and as I said, it was a lot of fun again today, especially since I can optimize things like this. You can see the 500 fits perfectly right away, both the initial and final measurements, even though it's already got a few years under its belt, but you can still see the basic performance is always there. As you can see, this is our daily business. So really, I can provide the 450s, and I can also do the 500s, like the 450 Mercedes and the 480 DAF. So as you can see, our primary core business is still the standard tractor units, and it's simply the way it is. As I've mentioned, these are the essential bread and butter trucks, and people make good money with them. I'm just saying, with these trucks, it's also the case that they're really fantastic vehicles for the drivers. The basic performance is great, the trucks are light, they're economical, and they have few problems. So I have to say it's genuinely fun for me to demonstrate as well, and as you can see with the eco-optimization feature, the driver is really going to enjoy the much smoother and more efficient ride. In terms of shifting, in terms of overall comfort, I'm really satisfied today. The company Huntelmann is a very good customer of mine. They also have beautiful trucks, and you can see the 8-wheeler on the trailer is really nicely done. The company also presents itself really well. I also enjoyed optimizing another truck today. As you saw, from our wide range of services, what we mainly work on are in fact the popular 6-cylinder engines. We really do a very large number of those. And so I'm glad you tuned in again with us today. If you were particularly interested in this specific topic, for optimization of the Scania R500, feel free to check out our website at www.schaknat.de. You can also email us, call us, or send us a WhatsApp message, whatever works best for you. If you call, we're also happy to advise you over the phone. Sometimes it's easier or quicker to explain things over the phone than by email or WhatsApp. As I said, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I really enjoy it when I see that what we're doing is actually helpful and that you're genuinely interested. There are actually a lot of truck fans among you. I also really enjoy making more videos. Feel free to comment under our posts about what needs to be improved or what could be better. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time. Thank you. Bye.